It was a cold Sunday morning. The sky was gray, and soft rain was falling outside. Sarah was alone in her house. She was making coffee and thinking about her quiet weekend. Life had been normal for many years. Calm, safe, predictable. She had no idea that in just a few minutes, everything would change. The doorbell rang. Sarah looked at the clock. It was 8:17 in the morning. She was not expecting anyone. She walked slowly to the door. For a moment, she felt something strange inside her chest. Not fear. Not exactly. Just a strange feeling. She opened the door, and her world stopped. A man was standing there. He looked at her, and she looked at him. Her heart began to beat very fast. The man's eyes were the same dark brown as hers. His face shape was the same. His nose, his lips, even the small scar above his right eyebrow, she had the same scar in the same place. Felt like she was looking into a mirror. But this mirror was alive. The man did not smile. He looked nervous. His hands were shaking a little. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Sarah's mind was racing. Who is this? Why does he look like me? Is this some kind of joke? Then the man finally spoke. His voice was soft but serious. I think I am your twin brother. The words felt heavy in the air. Sarah blinked. Then she laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was a confused laugh. That's not funny, she said quickly. I don't have a twin. I'm an only child. The man swallowed. I know that's what you were told, he said. That's what I was told too. Her smile slowly disappeared. The rain outside grew heavier. The man reached into his jacket pocket. Please, he said, just look at this. He handed her a folded piece of paper. Her hands felt cold as she opened it. It was old. The paper was slightly yellow. At the top it said, City General Hospital. Below that was a date. Her birth date. Sarah's heart skipped. She looked down further. Mother, Elizabeth Carter. That was her mother's name. Then she saw something that made her breathing slow down. Under the word delivery, it said, Twin A female, Twin B male. She felt dizzy. She looked back up at the man. He was watching her face carefully. I was born on the same day, he said quietly. Same hospital. Same time. Sarah's thoughts became loud inside her head. This is impossible. My parents would never lie to me. This must be fake. She looked again at his face. The similarity was too strong. It was not just the outside. It was something deeper. The way he stood. The way he looked at her. She felt something she could not explain. Connection. A strange pull inside her chest. What is your name? She asked softly. Daniel, he answered. The name felt unfamiliar, but at the same time not completely strange. Sarah stepped back slowly. Come inside, she whispered. Daniel walked in carefully, like he was afraid the moment would break. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The room felt smaller now. Neither of them knew what to say next. Sarah studied his face closely. You look exactly like me, she said. Daniel nodded slowly. When I first saw your photo online, I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. My photo? She asked. I was searching for people with my birth date. I always felt something was missing, like someone else was out there. Sarah felt chills on her arms. Her whole life, she sometimes felt lonely in a strange way. Even when she was surrounded by friends. Even when her parents loved her deeply. There was always a quiet, empty space inside her. Now, sitting in front of Daniel, that empty space felt different. But fear started to grow inside her. If this is true, she said slowly, why didn't my parents tell me? Daniel looked down at his hands. That's what I want to know too. The rain hit the windows harder. The sound filled the silence between them. Sarah stood up and began to walk back and forth in the kitchen. My parents would never hide something like this, she said, trying to convince herself. But even as she spoke, small memories began to appear in her mind. The way her mother changed the subject when she asked about her birth. The old photo albums that had missing pages. The strange look on her father's face whenever she talked about family history. Her breathing became heavy. Daniel watched her carefully. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. "I just want the truth." Sarah stopped walking. She looked at him again. For the first time, she saw something else in his eyes. Pain. Loneliness. 40 years of questions. And suddenly, she realized something. If he was telling the truth, then both of them had been living half a life. She sat back down slowly. Her voice was almost a whisper. "If you are really my twin." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Yes." She looked straight into his eyes. "Then why were we separated?" The question hung in the air. Neat. The next morning felt different. Sarah woke up, but nothing felt normal anymore. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. Her mind was full of Daniel's face. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him. Her face. His face. The same. Across town, Daniel was also awake. He had not slept much. He was staying at a small motel. The room was simple. Thin walls. Old carpet. A single lamp in the corner. He sat on the bed, holding the hospital paper in his hands. For 40 years, he had felt like something was missing. Now he knew why. That same afternoon, they agreed to meet again. This time, not at her house. They met at a quiet park. It was cold, but the sun was shining weakly through the clouds. They sat on a wooden bench. For a few seconds, they just looked at the lake in front of them. Two strangers, but not strangers. "So," Sarah said softly, "tell me about your life." Daniel gave a small smile. "It's not very exciting. I still want to know." He took a deep breath. "I grew up in a small house outside the city. My mom worked in a grocery store. My dad left when I was 6. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. "That must have been hard." Daniel nodded. "We didn't have much money. I started working when I was 14. Small jobs. Cleaning, carrying boxes, fixing things." He paused. "My mom was kind, very kind, but she always looked tired." Sarah listened carefully. She tried to imagine him as a child, running outside, coming home to a small kitchen, waiting for a father who never came back. "Did you ever feel?" She stopped, searching for words. "Different." Daniel laughed quietly. "All the time." He looked down at his hands. "I never looked like anyone in my family. Not my mom. Not my father. People used to say I looked adopted." Sarah felt cold. "I used to stand in front of the mirror and wonder who I really looked like," he continued. "I didn't know I was looking for you." Silence fell between them again. Now it was Sarah's turn. "My life was comfortable," she said slowly. Daniel turned to look at her. She felt almost ashamed. "I grew up in a big house, private school, vacations every summer. My father owns a business." Daniel did not react with anger. He just listened. "My parents were strict," she continued, "but they gave me everything. I never had to worry about money." She paused. "But something was always strange." Daniel looked at her carefully. "Strange how?" "I don't know," she said honestly. "I always felt alone in a way I couldn't explain, even when I was surrounded by people." She stared at the water. "On my birthdays, I sometimes felt sad, for no reason, like I was waiting for someone." Daniel's eyes slowly widened. "My birthdays were the worst days for me too," he whispered. They looked at each other. The same feeling, the same empty space, but they were living in two completely different worlds. Sarah had piano lessons. Daniel had late-night shifts. Sarah had birthday parties with many guests. Daniel had quiet dinners with his tired mother. Sarah went to college without worrying about fees. Daniel had to stop studying to work full-time. Two lives. One beginning. After a few minutes, Daniel asked a question. "Did your parents ever mention anything strange about your birth?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "They always said it was normal." But even as she said it, memories started to appear. She remembered once hearing her parents argue late at night. She was maybe 8 years old. She heard her mother cry. She heard her father say, "It was the only way." At the time, she did not understand. Now, those words felt heavy. Daniel noticed her face change. "What are you thinking?" She hesitated. I remember something. When I was little, my parents were fighting. My father said, it was the only way. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. The only way for what? Sarah shook her head. I don't know. The wind grew stronger. Leaves moved across the ground. Daniel leaned back on the bench. Do you ever wonder? He said quietly. What our lives would have been like if we stayed together? Sarah imagined it. 2 children growing up side by side, sharing secrets, fighting over toys, protecting each other at school. She felt tears forming in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I do. Daniel looked up at the sky. For 40 years, I thought I was alone. Sarah turned toward him. For 40 years, I thought I was complete. Their eyes met again, and both of them understood something painful. Neither of them had the full story. One had comfort without truth. The other had struggle without answers. And now the question was bigger than before. If their lives were so different, who decided that? And why? Daniel stood up slowly. We need proof, he said. Real proof. Sarah nodded. A DNA test. But deep inside, both of them already knew. They were connected in a way that science didn't. The DNA results arrived on a Thursday morning. Sarah was at work when she received the email. Her hands started shaking before she even opened it. Across town, Daniel received the same message at the same time. For a moment, neither of them opened it. Because once they did, there would be no going back. Sarah finally took a deep breath and clicked. The words appeared on the screen. 99.9% match, full sibling, identical twin. Her heart dropped. Daniel stared at his screen in silence. He felt no surprise, only confirmation. It was real. They were not imagining things. They were not crazy. They were twins. 40 years of separation. 40 years of silence. And now proof. That evening they met again. This time there was no doubt in their eyes. Only questions. So it's true, Sarah said quietly. Daniel nodded. Yes. The word felt heavy. Sarah looked at him carefully. I don't understand, she said. Hospitals don't just lose babies. Daniel leaned forward. This wasn't a mistake. The way he said it made her feel cold. If it wasn't a mistake, she asked slowly, then what was it? Daniel did not answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his bag, a small envelope. Inside it was a copy of his birth certificate. Sarah took it. She compared it to hers on her phone. Same hospital, same date, same time. But there was something different. Under mother's name, Sarah's certificate had Elizabeth Carter clearly printed. On Daniel's copy, the mother's name looked faded, almost like it had been changed. The letters were slightly darker in some places, like someone had rewritten it. Do you see that? Daniel asked. Sarah nodded slowly. That doesn't look normal. Daniel's voice became firm. Someone changed something. A strange silence filled the room. Sarah felt her chest tighten. My parents would never sell me a lie, she said softly, almost to herself. Daniel looked at her carefully. You don't know that. The words hurt, but they also felt possible. Sarah stood up suddenly. We need answers, she said. From who? Daniel asked. The hospital. The next morning they went together. City General Hospital looked old but still active. The building had been renovated many times over 40 years. But the records department was still in the basement. The hallway smelled like dust and paper. An older clerk sat behind the desk. Sarah tried to stay calm. We were born here in 1984, she explained. We need access to our birth records. The clerk typed their names into the computer. She frowned. That's strange. What? Daniel asked quickly. There are digital records, she said slowly. But the original paper files are missing. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Missing? The clerk nodded. It says here they were moved to archive storage years ago. But there's no scan of the original documents. Daniel exchanged a look with Sarah. Can we access the archive? He asked. The clerk hesitated. It's not usually allowed, but I can check. They waited. The sound of a ticking clock filled the silence. After 20 minutes, the clerk returned. "I'm sorry," she said. "The archive box for that week was reported damaged in a flood years ago." Daniel's jaw tightened. "A flood?" he repeated. "Yes, some files were lost." Sarah's heart was beating loudly. Lost, damaged, missing. Everything important seemed to disappear. As they walked out of the hospital, the sky felt darker. "This is not random," Daniel said firmly. "You think someone removed them?" Sarah asked. Daniel stopped walking. "Think about it. 2 twins born the same day. Same hospital. One grows up rich. One grows up poor. And the original records just happen to be gone." Sarah felt fear rising. But who would do that? Daniel looked straight at her. Someone who didn't want the truth found. The wind blew strongly around them. For the first time, Sarah felt anger. Not confusion. Not fear. Anger. "My whole life," she said quietly. "I trusted my parents completely." Daniel's voice softened. "I'm not saying they are evil, but they are hiding something," she finished. That evening, Sarah went home and searched through old boxes in the attic. Photo albums, baby clothes, old letters. She found something strange. An old hospital bracelet, small and faded. She turned it over. It had her mother's name, and below it, 2 identification numbers. Not 1, 2. Her hands started shaking again. Why would a single baby need 2 ID numbers? Meanwhile, Daniel was calling his adoptive mother. He asked gently about his birth. She hesitated. For the first time in his life, she sounded nervous. "I was told your mother couldn't keep you," she said softly. "Who told you?" Daniel asked. "The hospital. They said it was a private arrangement." Private arrangement. The words echoed in his mind. When Sarah and Daniel spoke later that night, both had new pie. The hospital had no answers. The records were missing. The files were damaged. Everything important was gone. But Daniel was not ready to stop. "There is always someone who remembers," he said. Sarah looked at him. "Who?" "The staff." So they began searching for people who worked at the hospital 40 years ago. It was not easy. Many had retired. Some had moved away. Some had passed away. After days of searching, they found a name. Nurse Margaret Lewis. She was on duty the night they were born. She was now 82 years old. She lived alone in a small house outside the city. Sarah felt nervous as they stood outside the house. The paint on the walls was old. The garden was quiet. Daniel knocked on the door. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened. An elderly woman stood there. Her white hair was tied back. Her eyes were sharp, but tired. "Yes?" she asked. Daniel cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we were born at City General Hospital in 1984. We believe you were on duty that night." The woman's expression changed. Very slightly, but enough for Sarah to notice. "I don't remember every baby," she said calmly. Sarah stepped forward. "We are twins." Silence. The air felt heavy. The nurse looked at both of them carefully. Her eyes moved from Sarah's face to Daniel's face. She did not speak for several seconds. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "So it's true." Daniel felt his heart jump. "You remember us," he said. The nurse opened the door wider. "Come inside." The house was quiet. Old furniture. Family photos on the walls. The smell of tea in the air. They sat in the living room. The nurse sat across from them. Her hands rested on her lap. She looked nervous. "You were not supposed to find each other," she said softly. Sarah felt her chest tighten. "What does that mean?" she asked. The nurse looked down at the floor. "There was never a mistake." Daniel leaned forward. "What do you mean?" The nurse closed her eyes for a moment. "You were separated on purpose." The words felt like a sudden storm. Sarah felt dizzy. Daniel's hands turned cold. "Why?" he asked quietly. The nurse did not answer right away. She stood up slowly and walked to a small cabinet. She opened a drawer and took out an old notebook. It looked very worn. She brought it back and placed it on the table. "I kept notes," she said. Private notes. For myself. She opened it carefully. Her hands were shaking. That night, she continued, your mother was crying, not because of pain, but because of fear. Sarah's heart began to beat fast. Fear of what? She whispered. The nurse looked at her. Money. The word felt small, but heavy. Your father was in serious debt, the nurse continued. Very serious. He owed money to dangerous people. Daniel's jaw tightened. And? He asked. The nurse swallowed. A wealthy couple had been trying to have a child for years. They were desperate. Sarah felt her breathing become slow and heavy. They offered help, the nurse said quietly. What kind of help? Daniel asked. The nurse's eyes filled with tears. They offered money. A lot of money. The room felt silent. Too silent. Sarah shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. Daniel stared at the nurse. You're saying our parents sold one of us? The nurse closed the notebook. Yes. The word hit like a hammer. Sarah felt like the floor was moving under her feet. Daniel stood up suddenly. That's impossible, he said sharply. The nurse looked at him sadly. I was there. She took a deep breath. It was arranged before you were even born. Papers were signed quietly. No official adoption records. Everything was done secretly. Sarah felt tears fall down her face. My parents loved me, she said weakly. I believe they did, the nurse answered gently. But they were desperate. Daniel's voice became low. Which one of us was chosen? The nurse hesitated. The male twin was meant to go to the wealthy couple. Daniel felt something break inside him. So I was the one traded, he said quietly. The nurse nodded slowly. But something went wrong. Sarah looked up. What do you mean? The wealthy couple changed their minds at the last moment, she explained. They were afraid of legal trouble. Daniel frowned. Then what happened to me? The nurse's voice became softer. You were placed through a private contact into another family. It was rushed, quiet, no official process. Sarah covered her mouth. So my parents took the money? The nurse did not answer, but her silence was enough. The room felt smaller, heavier. Daniel looked at Sarah. Their eyes met. 2 babies. 1 decision. 1 price. 40 years of different lives. Sarah felt anger rising inside her. They never told me, she whispered. Daniel's voice was steady but cold. They never looked for me. The nurse stood up slowly. I am sorry, she said. Sarah did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw one word. Sold. She sat in her dark living room, holding her phone, reading old family photos and messages again and again. Her childhood looked perfect in pictures. Smiling parents, birthday cakes, vacation trips. But now every photo felt different. Behind every smile, she saw a secret. Across the city, Daniel sat alone in his motel room. He was not crying. He was not shouting. He was quiet, too quiet. For 40 years, he believed his life was just unlucky. Now he understood something painful. It was not luck. It was a decision. The next morning, Sarah called Daniel. Her voice sounded different, stronger. We need to talk to them. Daniel knew who she meant. Their parents. That afternoon, they stood in front of the large house where Sarah grew up. The same big gate, the same clean garden. But today it did not feel warm. Felt like a building full of lies. Sarah's hands were shaking. Daniel noticed. Are you sure? He asked gently. She nodded. If we don't do this now, I will never be able to breathe again. She rang the bell. Her mother opened the door. Elizabeth Carter looked surprised. Sarah? What's wrong? Then she saw Daniel standing beside her daughter. Her face lost all color. For a moment, she looked like she had seen a ghost. She stepped back slowly. Who is this? She whispered. Sarah's voice was calm. You know who he is. Her mother's eyes filled with fear. Daniel felt something strange. This woman had given birth to him, but she was looking at him like a stranger. They walked inside. Sarah's father was sitting in the living room. When he looked up and saw Daniel, his face turned pale. Silence filled the room. Daniel spoke first. "We went to the hospital. No answer. We found Nurse Margaret. Still no answer." Sarah's father stood up slowly. His voice was low. "You should not have done that." Sarah felt anger rise inside her. "Not have done that? You separated us." Her mother began to cry. "It was not that simple," she whispered. Daniel's voice became firm. "Then explain it." The father sat down again. He looked older than Sarah remembered, more tired. "For years before you were born," he began slowly, "my business was failing. I borrowed money. Too much money." Sarah crossed her arms. "That does not explain selling a child." Her father closed his eyes. "The people I owed were not patient. They made threats." Daniel felt cold. "What kind of threats?" The father looked at him. "They said they would destroy everything. The business, the house, our safety." Sarah felt sick. "And your solution was to give away your son?" The mother cried harder. "We thought he would have a better life," she said between tears. Daniel laughed softly. Painful laugh. "A better life? I grew up in poverty." The room went silent. The parents looked shocked. "You weren't adopted by the wealthy couple?" the mother asked. Daniel shook his head. "They changed their minds." The father's face showed real surprise. They promised money," Daniel interrupted. The father's shoulders dropped. "Yes." Sarah felt like her heart was breaking. "So you took the money," she said quietly. Her father did not deny it. "Yes." The word was heavy. But then he said something unexpected. "We planned to find you later," he told Daniel. "When everything was stable. When the danger was gone." Daniel stared at him. "Did you?" The father could not answer. Silence was the answer. 40 years passed, and no one came looking. The mother looked at Daniel with tears. "I thought about you every birthday," she whispered. Daniel's eyes were wet now. "But thinking is not the same as fighting for me." Sarah felt torn inside. Part of her wanted to protect her parents. Another part wanted to scream. "You lied to me my whole life," she said. The father looked at her. "We were ashamed." Daniel's voice became softer, but stronger. "You chose money over us." The father shook his head quickly. "No, I chose survival." Sarah looked at him carefully. "And was it worth it?" That question filled the room. No one answered, because the truth was clear. They saved their business. They saved their house. They saved their comfort. But they destroyed something else. A bond. A childhood. A twin connection that can never be replaced. The mother stood up slowly and walked toward Daniel. She stopped a few steps away. "I am sorry," she whispered. Daniel looked at her. For a second, he saw pain in her eyes. Real pain. But pain did not erase 40 years. Sarah stepped closer to Daniel. They stood side by side. For the first time in their lives. Together. Facing the people who separated them. The father looked at both of them. "I cannot change what we did," he said quietly. "No," Daniel replied. "You cannot." Sarah felt tears fall again. After the confrontation, nothing felt real anymore. The house that once felt warm now felt cold. Sarah stood in the middle of the living room, looking at the walls where her childhood photos were hanging. Smiling faces, happy moments. But now she knew what was missing from every picture. Daniel, her other half. Her father sat quietly on the sofa. Her mother was still crying. No one knew what to say next. The truth had been spoken, but something still felt unfinished. Daniel broke the silence. "You said you planned to find me later," he said calmly. "When everything was stable." Her father nodded slowly. "Yes." Daniel looked at him directly. "When was that?" The father hesitated. "A few years after you were born. My business started doing well again." Sarah felt anger rise. "So you were stable?" The father looked down. "Yes." Daniel's voice became stronger. "And yet you never came." The father's hands began to shake. "There was a problem." Sarah frowned. "What problem?" The father swallowed hard. The people I owed money to, they did not just disappear. They kept connections. Powerful connections. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What are you saying? The father looked at both twins. I'm saying the wealthy couple who first wanted you, they were not ordinary people. The room felt colder. They had influence, the father continued. Political influence. Legal influence. Sarah felt confused. But they changed their mind, she said. They didn't take him. Yes, the father replied slowly. But the agreement had already been made. Money had already moved. Daniel's breathing became heavier. You signed something? The father nodded. A contract. Not official, but binding. Sarah stared at him. You signed away your son. The father closed his eyes. I signed to protect my family. Daniel stood up suddenly. And I was not your family? The words echoed loudly. The mother cried harder. You were, she said. You were both our family. Daniel shook his head. No, I was the price. Silence filled the room again. But then the father said something that made everything worse. We tried once. Both twins looked at him. What do you mean? Sarah asked. The father took a deep breath. When you were 5 years old, he said to Daniel, I hired someone to find you. Daniel felt frozen. And they found your location. They found the family you were placed with. Sarah leaned forward. Then why didn't you go? The father's voice became weak. Because I was warned. Warned. Daniel repeated. Yes, the father said. I received a call. They told me if I tried to take you back, everything would be destroyed. My business, my reputation, even your safety. Daniel felt anger like fire inside his chest. So fear stopped you. Yes. Sarah looked at her father in disbelief. You let fear decide our lives. The father's voice broke. I thought you were safe. I thought you were better off away from danger. Daniel laughed softly again. A painful, empty sound. I grew up wondering why I felt unwanted, he said. And you were living comfortably. The mother stood up and walked toward him again. You were never unwanted, she whispered. Daniel looked at her. Then why didn't you fight harder? She had no answer. Because the truth was simple. They chose safety over courage. Money over unity. Silence over risk. Sarah felt torn in two directions. She loved her parents. They raised her. They cared for her. But now she saw them differently. Not as perfect parents, but as flawed humans who made a terrible decision. Daniel looked at Sarah. His eyes were not angry now. They were tired. So what now? He asked quietly. Sarah did not know. Part of her wanted to walk away from everything. Part of her wanted to scream. Part of her wanted to hug her brother and never let go. Her father stood up slowly. I cannot ask for forgiveness, he said. But I need you to understand something. Daniel crossed his arms. What? I regret it every day. The room became quiet. Every birthday, the father continued. I thought about you. Every time Sarah laughed. I wondered what your laugh sounded like. Daniel's face softened slightly, but pain was still there. You had a choice, he said, and you chose wrong. The father nodded. Yes, that word carried more weight than any excuse. Outside, the sky was dark. Rain began to fall again just like the day they first met. Sarah looked at Daniel. For the first time, she realized something. Their parents' decision shaped their lives. But it did not have to shape their future. She stepped closer to him. We cannot change what they did, she said softly. Daniel looked at her. But we can decide who we are now. The room felt different. Not lighter, but clearer. The lies were gone. The fear was exposed. The past had been revealed completely. But there was still one final question hanging.